Good morning, Morai Rabotai, Biruchim, Habaim. We are continuing on Masechet Succah. We are on Daf Yud Dalet Amud Bet, 24 lines up from the bottom of the Amud. Today's Amud is being learned as a zchut for the Refuah Shelma of Esther Bracha Bat Chaya, the girl in our community that is in critical condition, should have Refuah Shelma Be'ezrat Hashem. Amen. Also, for the Refuah Shelma of Nisim Ben Miriam, that should have full recovery, and the Refuah Shelma of the young mother with cancer, with a lot of little children, Rachel Simcha Bat Chaya, that should have full recovery, Refuah Shelma Be'ezrat Hashem. Amen. This week's learning of the community has been dedicated graciously by the Dayan family, by Shea family, by Cohen families. Should be an ultimate zchut for all their mishpachot, Be'ezrat Hashem. Amen. Okay, so we are really in the middle of a little Gemara over here, discussing the machloket that we spend a lot of time. What exactly is a schach that's kasher, what's not kasher, and really we should have brought a whiteboard here to discuss it, but we'll try to do without. It's not going to be that necessary. It's just one element that we're going to discuss, putting it on the visual. So says the Gemara, after discussing the clear braita that we had supporting Shmuel and clear braita that we had supporting Rav, how they learned, now the Gemara says, ומודה רבי מאיר שאם יש בין נסר לנסר כמלוא נסר, שמניח פסל ביניהם וכשרה. Rabbi Meir is agreeable with one scenario that you could have a board that's 4 tfachim wide and still your sukkah would be kasher. What would be that element? That element would be, if you have the, probably it's behind us, the, there we go. Thank you so much. So says Rabbi Meir, I would be amendable to a scenario in which you have boards of 4 tfachim and still it will be kasher. How so? It would be a scenario like, a little bit more than this. It will be a scenario like this. You have different elements here, and the same would be here as well. Okay, so we have enough lines over here. Now this is a Gemara that needs our Gemara later on Daf Yud Chet. The Gemara there basically quantifies this that we're saying over here. So we're just going to jump the gun and say it. This will be the middle of your sukkah over here. And you have a board that is 4 tfachim wide here. Then you have 4 tfachim empty that you fill in with schach kasher. You have another board that is 4 tfachim wide. Then you have another empty space over here that's going to be your kosher schach. Then you have another board here, and you will have kosher schach here. Then you have the same thing from here. You have a board, you have empty that you fill in with kosher schach, and you have one more board here, and kosher schach, one more board here, and kosher schach. So it ends up being that this is exactly 8 amot, right? So the middle point over here, in the middle of the sukkah, is a point of 4 amot. So the dofan akuma concept, that if you have schach pasul, you could still go and imagine that this wall is extending onto the schach as a bent wall, dofan akuma. So that could be mechaper on all these schach pasuls that you have, because up to here still you're less than 4 amot, right? So all of this is considered your wall, and then you have schach kasher here, 4 tfachim, And another schach kasher here, 4 tefachim. That's 8 tefachim of schach kasher. Last we checked, the minimum shiur of a kasher sukkah is 7 tefachim. So you have this massive sukkah that the entire thing is pasul, aside from the middle. And Rabbi Meir is agreeable that you have this sukkah that is, 12 feet wide, and you're sitting with your wife and mishpacha in the middle, little thing over there, and eating your sukkah, and it's all good. So that's what the Gemara is referring to. We're going to come to this picture one more time in today's shir. So it says, the Gemara, Umodeh Rabbi Yehuda, sheim natan alea neser shura chavar ba tfachim, and Rabbi Yehuda is agreeable that if you have a neser, a board that is arba tfachim, 4 tfachim wide, is kshera, the sukkah is still kasher. Again, remember, we are we're juggling this Gemara with the Gemara in Daf Yud Zayin and Yud Chet constantly in every line. Because the Gemara there says in Daf Yud Zayin, remember, just as a refresher, that if you have a schach pasul on top of your sukkah that goes across the whole sukkah, the entire sukkah is invalidated. It's invalid. Not considered a sukkah kashera. So it says, the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda is moded that you could have a board that's 4 tefachim wide, going across the whole sukkah, and still is kasher. Why? Because this board happens to be within the 4 tefachim, so it's included in your dofan akuma. Just make sure not to sleep underneath that board. Ve'en yeshanim tachtav, says the Gemara, you cannot possibly sleep beneath that part of the schach, but other than that, your sukkah is good to go. Vayashen tachtav, and if you do sleep under it, says the Gemara, Rav Huna Amar, psula, lo yatzai yedei chovato. You are not fulfilling your obligation of sukkah. You're in the sukkah, but you're really out of the sukkah. So therefore, you haven't fulfilled your obligation of sukkah. Fine. So that now concludes basically the last piece of the Gemara that we were doing. This few next lines are a new topic. Now, the question is obvious. We have the Gezerah of Tikra, according to Shmuel. We really paskin like Shmuel, which we're going to see in just a moment. Before we get into this, let me ask a question from the Chevra over here. Rav or Shmuel, halakha should be like who most of the time? Rav. In everything we pass in halakha like Rav, because Rav was a bigger Tamei Hacham, so to speak, than Shmuel. In general sense, Rav is Tana Upalik. Aside from Dinei Mamonot, when it comes to Hashel Mishpat, we pass like Shmuel because Shmuel's expertise was Dinei Mamonot. Shmuel was a tremendous Dayan, so halakha k'Shmuel bedini or Charav be'isuri. So here, just from the Klalei HaHora'ah, we should pass in like Rav. Now, what did Rav say, by the way? Rav said the Machloket Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir is by only 4 tefachim, right? Anything less than 4 tefachim, any board that's less than 4 tefachim is kasher. It's good to go, right? Shmuel said 4 tefachim, everybody agrees that's pasul. Because, Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda, who should the halacha be like? Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir v'chavero, halacha kechavero. Rabbi Meir disagreeing with somebody else, halacha is like somebody else, usually. Wow. Right? And Rabbi Yehuda v'chavero, halacha ke Rabbi Yehuda, usually. So if we follow all the loops of Klalei Apsak, in our Gemara, before we know anything, we should say, well, Rav and Shmuel halacha is like Rav. And Rav is explaining a machloket Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir. Halacha should be like Rabbi Yehuda. What does Rabbi Yehuda hold according to Rav? Everything is kasher. There is no gezerat tikra. You could go to Home Depot, get the wide, nice 8x4s, drop them on the sukkah, hazak baruch, you're good to go. That should be the halacha. It's not the halacha. It's not the halacha. Why not? In just a moment, we will see why, perhaps one of the reasons why we paskin like Shmuel in this specific case, and not like Rav as following the general rules of Horah, right? Now, before we say that, so if the halacha is like Shmuel, then you have machloket Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir, and halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda. Now, what is the halacha? That any neser, any board that is 4 tfachim wide, it's pasul, right? So I have this. Too late, Rabbi. I went to Home Depot. I bought this like beautiful cedar tree, 4 tfachim wide boards, and I have them. Can I make a schach from them? No. Oh, I came up with a new idea, Rabbi. I'm going to put them like this. Instead of putting them horizontally, I'm going to put them vertically on the side. Now it's like 2 inches only, right?
Picture here.
Kasher or pasul? A great question. I would say, well, you're not doing the Gezrat Tikra. For all practical purposes, your schach is a little with 1-2 inches. You're good. That's what I would say, right? Maybe. Or maybe we should say, once this thing you can't make schach with, the whole thing is pasul. You do it like this, you do it like this, you do it like that. It doesn't make a difference. It becomes like a piece of metal. It's schach pasul, however you slice it and dice it, it's going to be pasul. Which one is it? That's the question that the Gemara is going to have. Says the Gemara, Itmar. We learned, Hafachan al sidehen, if you take these 4 tfachim wide pieces of wood and you turn them on their side, and you making a schach like that, is that kasher or not? Rav Huna Amar Psula. Rav Huna is one of the Gdolei Amarim. He says it's pasul. Rav Chisda, his counterpart, and Rabba Bar Rav Huna, both of them say kshera. Both of them say it's kasher. So a massive machloket erupts. Ikla Rav Nachman, who was of Bedin and he was Chatara de Benesia, was a big dayan. He comes visiting the town, and Rav Chisda and Rabba Bar Huna run to visit him to ask him this question. Maybe, just maybe, he's going to support their shita versus Rav Huna. So they ask him the question. When he comes to Surah, again, there are 2 main yeshivas, Surah and Pumbedita, right? So Rav Nachman did not live in Surah, but he's visiting town, and they run to him to ask him this question. Ul legabe Rav Chisda Rabba Bar Huna. They both went, the counterparts of Rav Huna, both went to visit him. So, Amri le, hafachan al sidehen mahu. What's the halacha chacham? Hafachan says, I have this like 4 tvachim wide pieces of wood, but I'm putting them like this for schach. Kasher, pasul, amalehu, psula. He said it is pasul, and he said, I will explain to you why it's pasul. You know why they're pasul? Why you can't tamper with it? Because na'asu k'sheputin shel matechet. Once you have a wood that is 4 tfachim wide, the gezerah of Chazal not to be mesachech with them is you deal with this exactly like a schach pasul, as though it's made out of metal, and therefore you can't make metal if you put it like this. Makes it, no. It's the same exact thing as a schach that is intrinsically pasul. And therefore, you put it like this, you put it like that, makes 0 difference. Fine. So it says the Gemara, of course their excitement fizzled out, right? He popped their bubble. So comes, they come back to Rav Huna, and when they come back, Amar lehu Rav Huna, Rav Huna says, Lo amri lechu, the Amar Kvati. Didn't I tell you that if you go to him, he's going to say like me? Right? He was on the inn. He knew that they're going there. They came back and said, knew what happened? So I said, oh, he said like you. So I told you he's going to say like me. But then it says, the Gemara says, Amru lehu mi amar lan mor tama. I said, yeah, he said halacha. He explained it. He said why it is. The tam of the halacha. So says the Gemara, Umi amar lan mor tama velo kabilan mine. Did you say a reason and we didn't accept it? The reason we didn't accept it is because it didn't make sense. You didn't explain yourself well. Amar lehu, and Rav Huna fired back. He says, Umi ba'itan minai tama v'lo amri lechu. Did you ask what the reason is and I didn't tell you? He never bothered to ask. He just argued with me and then he went running around shopping for psakim. So therefore I didn't say it. Fine. Says the Gemara. Let us try to suggest a raya from a clear braita for this shita. In other words, the fact that once you have a wide piece of wood, wide enough for tfachim minimum, that the thing itself becomes pasul. That now in no way you could be mesachech with this piece because it becomes like a piece of metal. Let us prove this from a braita. What is the braita? If you have a small sukkah, less than 7 tfachim, right?
Less than 7.
Well, it's ena mechazeket. It's not if it's small. Ena mechazeket kedei rosho verubo v'shulchano, o shenifresa bapirsa, or that you have a pirsa inside of it, kedei sheyizdaker ba gedi bebatrosh, or that you have in the wall of the sukkah you have a problem that a gedi, a baby goat could come inside, right? Or you have none of those problems. It's big enough, the walls are good, but you put on it a schach pasul. You put a piece of board, a piece of wood, that has 4 tfachim of width on it. Even though that you didn't put the whole schach in. You have this piece of wood that's wide, and you put it on the edge, on the corner of the sukkah, 3 tfachim of it, or less than 3 tfachim of it is in, the rest of it is out of the sukkah. So the piece that I have in the sukkah is kasher, because it's only 2.5, less than 3 or 3 tfachim, depending on which Tana you hold. Like the piece I have in the sukkah is kasher. It happens to be it has an extension out, but extension is out of the sukkah. Is that good? Says the Braita, this is a Braita. Says absolutely pasul. Psula. Says Gemara, hechidami. What's the case over here? Lav kegon sha'pachan al sidehem. So maybe the Gemara says, right? The Gemara's suggestion is maybe the Braita is talking about not that the sticking out, but it is that you turn it on the side of it, and still the Braita is saying it's pasul. Still the Braita is saying even if you turn it on its side, still it's pasul. And you see from here that you cannot use the boards that are 4 tfachim wide in any way. The Gemara says no. Lo hacha b'mayaskinan klikon the anche apume de metalelata. We're talking about a case that we explained originally, that you're putting it on the edge of the sukkah. 1 or more tfachim are sticking out, and you only have 3 or less tfachim in. You would have thought that it should be kasher, and the Braita says it's pasul. But it does not indicate if you put it like this, what happens. Still could be from the Braita. We don't see that if you put it on its edge like this, vertically, that's going to be pasul. That you need our Gemara to say. So the Braita that the Gemara suggested to be a proof for the din of Rav Huna ended up not really being a proof. So this does not go up to the level of Tanaic proof. It stays as machloket amoraim between Rav Huna and Rav Nachman on one side, and Rav Chisda and Rabba bar Rav Huna on the other side. So says the Gemara, it's like a schach pasul that half of it goes out of the sukkah. V'chol pesel hayotze min sukkah nidon kesukkah. Any extension is going to have the same halacha as the sukkah, and therefore a schach that is 4 tfachim wide, it still stays invalid and pasul, even if you stick half of it outside the area of your sukkah. Fine. Next Mishnah says the Mishnah tikra she'en alea ma'aziva. Now you have a room, a house that you took half of the schach, not schach, half of the ceiling off, but not half of the area, but the ceiling has two elements to it. Had, in the time of Chazal, two elements to it. Nowadays also it has two elements. There is the boards of wood that you put on, and then there is the actual ceiling that makes it waterproof. So now we have fancy things nowadays. Back in the day, they would put also clay. They would be tachbetit and try to insulate it and make it waterproof as well. But the base was wood. Now imagine a ceiling that you don't have the mud, the cement part on top. It's just the pieces of wood. So you have these boards of wood next to each other, creating a ceiling. Can I make that kasher for sukkah? I'm willing to make a donation to the shul, or put some schach kasher on top. Is there a way? So it's a three-way machloket, Tanaim, how to go about this. Says the Gemara, says the Mishnah, Tikrashen ala mazdiwa. If you don't have the mud part, the cementing, the ceiling, the insulation part on top, it's just wood that has been nailed down to the frame of the house, the roof of the house. So says the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Bet Shammai Omrim, Mefakfek v'notel, achat mi bentayim. Bet Shammai hold that you have to unnail the pieces of wood, take the nails out of it, learning like the Rambam's understanding and many other Shonim. The mefakfek doesn't just mean that you have to pick it up. You have to take the nails, the screws out basically. V'notel achat mi bentayim. And you also have to take one, every other beam you have to take off, right? So you leave this one, you take next one, you leave the next one, you take the next one, and so on and so forth, right? But Hillel said no, either or. You have to do both. Mefakfek or notel achad mi bentayim. You could do either or. Because if you unnail and move every one of them, so now I'm putting this, the Shem Schach, right? Now it's kasher because each one of them is no longer. What's the problem of the sukkah that has a ceiling, which was a ceiling of a house? Well, when you built it, you were building a house, and it says Chag HaSukkot Taaseh, that it should be Taaseh v'lo min ha'asui, right? You have to make it for schach, l'shem schach. So if I take each one of them, pick it up, unnail them, pick them up, and put it back, says Bet Hillel, this is now l'shem schach. It's good. Or what you could do is take every other one out, because now when you look at the entirety of the schach, the entirety of the roof, this roof was made for a sukkah. I did something real to it in order to affix this for sukkah. So the fact that I didn't touch this one or didn't touch that one doesn't make a difference, because I did something mamashi for creation of what is there now, which is sukkah. It has an element of chiddush in it, because I didn't touch this necessarily, but the way we look at it is that this entire roof that you see over here, I made this for my sukkah. I did something fundamental change of maaseh in order to make this kasher. Fine. So says the Gemara, and the third shita says Rabbi Yehuda is Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir omer notel achat mi bentayim ve'eno mefakfek. You only take every other piece of wood, of the beams, and you don't have to bother with being mefakfik. Why? Because this Rabbi Meir holds, this is our Rabbi Meir, remember? This is our Rabbi Meir that we just got introduced to him 30 seconds ago. And he holds, these are beams that are 4 tfachim wide. And Rabbi Meir holds those are completely pasul, worthless. They're not the schach. Now you're going to take the schach pasul and you're going to unnail it and pick it up and say l'shem yihud and put it back and daven and say some tehillim. Doesn't make a difference. It's pasul. It makes zero difference. So therefore, says Rabbi Meir, notel achat mi bentayim, you take one, every other one off, and you replace it with schach kasher, and the sides you could use them. This is where we come to this, right? You could use the sides for having a dofan akuma, so long as in the middle you have somewhere that's kasher, and that would be your hechsher. But you can't do a moving of the thing, and the thing itself will become schach kasher. It's 4 tvachim wide, it's pasul, you don't need to move them. You just take every other one, and hopefully you'll end up with enough of a schach kasher in the middle, with usage of the concept of dofan akuma, and then you'll have your schach. That's basically the Mishnah that we have, but we overly simplified the explanation of these 3. Tomorrow, Be'ezrat Hashem, we will go over this with 1 or 2 more layers of depth of understanding these 3 and their differences, and then the Gemara will be following very smoothly afterwards. Be'ezrat Hashem, looking forward for tomorrow's Gemara. Hazaku Baruch.